Rachel, what books have you been reading lately?
Throne of Glass. That's what I've been reading.
Rachel likes her young adult romance fantasy.
Yeah, I've been like in the romance fantasy space. And so, but if I read like adult, there's like too much sexy time for me. And so if I stay in like the young adult area, it's like less bad, even though like Sarah J. Maas has quite a bit to be in that space. Actually.
It's pretty raunchy.
Yeah. I think Throne of Glass technically is not young adult, but it's not a romance. It's a fantasy.
That has romance elements.
The other one is a romance with fantasy. This one's a fantasy with romance. So there's like, I'm in like book 4 or 5 or 4. No, I'm in the 4 right now, and there hasn't been anything.
Technicalities.
Nothing. Why are you outing me like this?
Good reading. Because it's a good start to the talk.
Yeah. I like my trashy things sometimes. Like I'm okay with like some trashy, like I like fantasy enough that if it was just romance, I've never read like a true romance, I don't think. Like it's not interesting to me, but if it's fantasy romance, I can get behind. We've already talked, I think I've already talked about my love of like Love Island and stuff.
Yep.
So like I'm not gonna lie, I like some trash. I'm not gonna lie. That is not having to do with anything we're gonna talk about.
She's like a raccoon. She loves trash.
What's the word that you like? Smut.
Yeah, that's a good word.
You love the word smut.
It's such it just hits so well. It sounds like it is. Like that, it hits.
Yeah.
Such a good word. We were talking about that in Europe while we were walking around. Like, oh, the word smut. Such a good word. Love a good word. That's not what we're talking
about this time at all.
Is that the topic of this podcast? No, it could be.
If people want me to talk about that, we can. Let us know. But we were going to talk. You were asking me about a book because I was holding a book right now.
Yeah.
But this is not what I've been reading because I've read it before.
Yes.
What is this book?
I got on this kick like 2 years ago. I would say after we had saved up enough to like put a down payment for the house that we are now currently recording this podcast in. I got on this finances kick where I was realizing like, I don't know enough about finances. I should be smarter about investing and saving, et cetera, et cetera. So I started reading a lot of books about finance and investing, just trying to sort of educate myself about it because there's so much material out there. So I did read some like, finance romance and finance fantasy.
I bet that there's a subset of like finance smut. I bet we could find it like business smut.
Well, that sounds like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's probably right.
Because they're like the wealthy billionaire.
I've never read that, so I don't know.
I haven't either, but I've like read the synopsis and it's like wealthy billionaire. And
I thought 50 Shades was if we took Twilight and made it about businessmen. Because wasn't it written as like a Twilight
like fan fiction? I think you're right, actually.
And then they changed it, and he's like, oh, let's make him a businessman. Going to buy you stuff.
Businessman, wealthy.
Even though Edward was pretty wealthy.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I've been reading that. Let me tell you, it's super high quality, super educational. No. But so I've been reading a lot of...
a weird turn.
I love where this is going. Okay, this is wonderful. Whenever anybody that I'm with is like, I did not see things going this way, I'm like, perfect,
That's the goal of this podcast.
That's how you know it's going to be a good conversation. Yeah. Good. Completely out of left field. Oh, so yeah, read it. A lot of finance books. Books like The Millionaire Next Door. You've got the most popular ever now I'm blanking on it here. Robert Kiyosaki. Popular. What is it? Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like which I feel like everybody and their mom reads, and suddenly they're like, I need to buy real estate. We gotta buy 18 rental properties.
It's not
nothing
nightmare.
Against that, but having to pay for maintenance on this house and the thought of multiplying that by a lot more houses, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a nightmare. Especially because
different strategies.
Yeah. Hey,
not for me.
And that's fine. And so if you want to do it, that's great. Good for you. But I got videos to make. I don't have time to maintain houses.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I finally hit upon this book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, which really was an enjoyable read, really spoke to me. I really liked it. I liked it enough that I read the Kindle version because that's how I read like all my books. But then Rachel is this sort of like purist where she wants to read paper and be able to smell the pages and stuff.
And you've since converted me.
I have.
Because I have a Kindle now.
Finally.
Because it's so convenient. But for a long time, for most of my life, I was like, I like the real book. I would go to the library and get the books. But it's just such a hassle, like to go to the library and they don't have it. when you could just download it and have it in like 3 minutes on your Kindle.
Quicker than that. Just
so,
click that one click buy on Amazon. It just delivers right to you.
Yeah, I've kind of been converted, but I do, as like an experience, I do like a real book. But
as she caresses the paper book in front of her right now.
It's nice. But I'm also the type of person that has like a paper planner, and I don't use the planner app on my phone or anything. Like I have to physically write it down.
Which is great unless you're trying to plan something and you're not at home. And she's like, my planner's at home. Don't worry. I'll remember whenever we get home and I'll write it down. And I'm like,
but I do.
Yeah, usually, but sometimes we're like around the world, and I'm like, why didn't you bring your planner to Europe? Dang it! Now
I should have.
I'm
crazy.
We'll get her converted
That's
to
a
digital.
whole other issue.
Soon enough.
That's a whole other podcast.
She's very analog. Okay, she likes her pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
I am not that because I can't actually read anything that I've written because my handwriting's so bad. So I don't deal with that.
Yeah.
But loved this "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" book enough that I read it and then I bought the
a paper copy for
to
me
give to Rachel.
Yeah.
Like, here you go. Yeah. Now read this. So I made her read it. And I think a lot of the philosophy that Ramit espouses in this book has really changed the way that we think about money and the way that we focus on money in the last 2 years.
Our experience with money, yeah.
Yeah, and just our general philosophy toward it. So if you want to have your world rocked and possibly change the way that you think about your finances, check that out.
That's our favorite recommendation for money books. And everybody has a different feel about it, about how they think about their finances and what they want to focus on. But what we liked about this one, because I feel like our backgrounds in money was different. Like I grew up in a house where we didn't have a ton of money, and I was very fearful of money. I grew this unhealthy fear of it, like fear of having it, what to do with it when I had it. Like it was just like fear of not having it. I had a lot of anxiety attached to money. Like Matt grew up where his parents had money, but they just were super savers. And so coming into our marriage and after we were debt free, we had
Pretty
to pay.
much.
Yeah, except for the house. We had to pay when we got married. We had to pay off. I had some student loan debt.
Yeah.
That we had to pay off, but otherwise, we don't really have any debt, thankfully, except for the house.
And we've both been raised to be pretty debt free, I would say. My parents are buy a car outright so you don't have a car payment, which I think is really smart considering how quickly cars depreciate in value. You can buy a used car that's a few years old for significantly less. Well, it's harder to in this market right now, but you can still find one that is less than buying something new. And if you pay for it outright, then you don't have a payment plan, which is nice.
Yeah. And so we got into the space where it's okay, we need other advice, and it's not going to be from Dave Ramsey or something.
Dave Ramsey, which nothing against Dave Ramsey. The amount of work that he's done helping people get out of debt is fantastic.
Oh, fantastic. But we weren't in that space. We were what do we do now? How do we build our wealth? What do we do? And it's weird because we don't have regular income, and that's going to speak to a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening. It's oh, I could make a lot of money this quarter and no money, make negative money this quarter. That's very possible.
You might relate
you
to
could
this
have
here.
months that you make 3 times what we make the next month. That's really honestly possible, and has happened.
And if you film weddings, for example, it's your
dry season.
You have dry seasons and wet seasons where it's feels like it's raining weddings and you're booking a ton,
and then you might have 6 months where you don't have any.
And then the winter hits and suddenly it's too cold. Nobody wants to get married. So suddenly nothing happens.
Planning how to have a healthy relationship with our money was a priority. How do I not have, for me, it was how do I not have fear about those dry seasons?
Yeah.
But also if we have more money, what do we want to spend it on? What's our goal? And so what Ramit talks about is his book is I will teach you to be rich. But his whole thing is, what is a rich life for you? It's not I will teach you to be rich and have all this wealth. It's how do you prioritize the money that you do have?
So rich doesn't mean, you drive a Ferrari and you live in a mansion.
Monetarily rich. It just means
it's rich
quality of life.
More so a lot of the things that people consider to be rich don't require millions upon millions of dollars. And so it's really more so prioritizing what do you care about and what do you want to spend your money on. And so we've been trying to figure that out. And that's been the last couple of years of us being okay, what is interest? What do we want to spend money on? But Ramit has this phrase where he's like, what is your rich life? Like, what is your rich life? It's going to be unique to you. Like, what specific things do you
really
care about?
Specific. Not, I want to live comfortably, or I want a nice house. Like, really specific. Like, he goes through examples of like, no, I want to feel comfortable that every time I go to the theater, I buy popcorn, even though, and a drink, even though it's ridiculously expensive. That's my definition. Like, it's not mine, but like, that's one of his examples. Or I want to buy fancy handbags. Like, that might be somebody's like definition.
Which
of
is also
life.
not your example either.
No, it's not mine. But it's like, oh, those are very specific. Like, so for us, we talked about like what our rich life was, and for us, like, we like going out to eat.
Yeah.
So we don't want to feel guilty about when we do go out to eating out.
Yeah.
We value travel, and we want to travel, would we say, every 2 or 3 months.
If we can.
With work and the kids, to travel more.
Yeah.
And to put a significant amount of our money into that.
Yeah.
And we want, right now, at this stage of our life, we want to save aggressively for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Because we're still like in our 30s right now. And so if like I said, I read a lot of finance books and they're all talking about compound interest and like you save more earlier and then it's going to grow faster and then you're going to be set whenever you retire. And so I'm like, cool. Well, we're still in like our 30s. We should probably make sure we have that sort of lockdown figured out.
And so like after reading this, we're like, okay, like how are we like guilt-free, like doing those things?
Exactly.
And so we've kind of come up with a strategy of how we're doing that. And we kind of look at it, or I do, because I do much of the money, and then I talk to Matt about it, is we look at our finances quarterly instead of month by month, because month by month it fluctuates a lot. But if I look at it quarterly when taxes are due and stuff, I can kind of gauge like how much extra we have and how much I'm going to put towards retirement and how much we have wiggle room with travel and those things. And we can talk about that more. So if you guys like us talking about finances,
investing, all that random stuff,
investing and how we do that, and like what's excess, and you can get pretty deep into it. I just don't know if that's interesting. So if that's interesting, let us know.
Let us know.
But we like Ramit a lot, so
yeah, it's been good. And so we've been sort of dialing in what our rich life is and what that means. And like Rachel was saying, some of it's travel, some of it is eating out, some of it is sort of prioritizing and
it's going to change.
Yes.
Like for right now, I think that's our goal. But in the future, I could see it being like, I would love to do a lot of work on this house or maybe get a different house. And so I think in the future, ideally, maybe when things on the retirement side are more full, that maybe we'll switch and do more home renovation. Like, it's not like that's always our priority, but for right now, it's like, when the kids are young and they're not in like school all the time because they're so small, it's easy to travel with them and not take away from their schedules here. It's like, we want to travel a lot and we want to save for retirement. Like, think that could change maybe. Yeah,
I've discovered in regards to travel, because growing up, Rachel never traveled. She very rarely went on a vacation.
Yeah, we went on like one trip to out of state. We went to Disney World when I was in 6th grade. I think it was the only trip we ever took.
And so
my family just doesn't value travel.
Being raised by a dad who was a pilot, we traveled fairly often, at least one vacation per year, I would say, where it's like, we're going to go somewhere. We're all going to go as a family.
We guys went to Hawaii a lot.
We're going to have a fun time. My dad would exercise his points and be like, okay, I have enough points. We're going to Hawaii.
That was just your dad's. He likes tropical.
He loves tropical. Yeah. And he also would, unlike me and Rachel, who are very communicative of like, okay, when do you want to go? Okay, let's book something in like a year. I remember my dad, like one time, it was like 2 weeks before or something like that, spring break when we were kids, I'm pretty sure. He just told my mom like, hey, what are we doing for spring break? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, I'm going to Hawaii. And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, I've got tickets. They're cheap. And we're like, okay. So the whole family went to Hawaii.
I would hate that.
Rachel's too much of a planner for that. But I love stuff like that. So I'm very spontaneous in that way. But we're trying to think about, okay, how do we do this in a way that's like responsible? And can we use points for stuff? And how do we like schedule stuff out like that? So that's part of it. But also we're finding that our rich life is also just being really present with our kids. And so unlike a normal 9 to 5 where I'd be like out working all the time and come home, like put the kids to bed, like the perk of being self-employed is that we're here with our kids basically all the time. So I'm able to spend time with them and get to know them and like change diapers constantly. And
full co-parent experience.
Yes. full co-parenting. And that's been really, really great. And I'm super, super thankful for it. And I think that's like a huge chunk of what we consider our rich life, as it were.
I couldn't, like, our kids are so used to having both of us in the same room as them that when like Matt leaves to do something or I leave to do something, like, where'd you go? Why weren't you here? Like, our 4-year-old's like, why are you leaving?
If I go to like the grocery store, she'll be like, Daddy, don't leave. And I'm like, I'm literally coming back in like 50
They're
minutes.
very used to having both of us all the time, which I know is not everybody's situation. And we're really fortunate to have, like, to be able to be with our kids all the time and to be with each other all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a big deal for us, was like, we're never really apart. Like you take some businessy trips without me, with work, but
a couple times a year.
But other than that, it's like you can look at our text exchange, and it's like, oh, like the kids are awake, but I was in the other room. It was like, it's not when we're up. Like,
you texted me this morning, like, we are awake. And I was like, okay,
that's
cool.
because you were in the studio and I had to tell you something without interrupting you. So it's like, you can tell that we don't spend any time apart. Like,
but
we're
otherwise,
in the
you hadn't
same
texted
room.
me since like Wednesday, like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and I'll look sometimes and I'm like, oh, we last texted a week ago, 2 weeks ago, because
we've been in the
together.
not even the same house, in the same room with each other 90% of our day.
And I've talked to a lot of couples that aren't cool with that, and they're like, oh, I need my own space, or I need my me time, or like, oh, I would hate it if I was always with my wife or husband. And I'm like, huh? Oh, me and Rachel never really had that issue. We're always just together hanging out
with our children.
Yes,
we are, all 4 of us are always in the same room with each other,
hanging
except
out.
when, like, Matt definitely has some times when he's like recording or things and needs to do things alone. Their children can't be there. Like, that happens not every day, but often.
Yeah.
But other than that, we're all 4 of us in the same room.
Here we are
all the time. And I don't know, that's just like what we like.
Yeah. So I would say for you, if you're self-employed like us and all, if you are at a point where you're looking at your finances and you're like, okay, I've taken care of a lot of my debt, which, hey, if you haven't taken care of your debt, like,
that's first.
The I Will Teach You to Be Rich book,
it gets into that.
Does cover like killing your credit card debt. And
it's like a 6-week program to get things on track, is like the beginning of the book.
And he's really big on automation, which is great. So it's a lot of, you set up stuff to auto transfer. You set up stuff to be
how's your retirement
ready
set up?
to go.
How's your savings account set up?
And
your banks are using, what credit cards are you using?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's all of that.
It's all that. It goes into everything.
But like, what's for you as you're doing stuff, if you're self-employed, especially, that's who I'm talking to here. If you're a self-employed wedding filmmaker or just a filmmaker, or you're just somebody that is creative, or you're just listening to me randomly ramble here. Hello. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Your voice got deeper when you said hello.
Hi. Yes. Glad you're here. If you're self-employed, though, you don't have that normal 9 to 5 lifestyle where you have a consistent income or a consistent paycheck or something like that. I remember whenever we bought this house, I was like talking to a mortgage guy, and I'm like, yeah, like, can I get a mortgage? And he's like, yeah, just send me like your W-2. And I'm like, I don't have a W-2. And he's like, okay, well, like, you're self-employed. Oh, that's fine. Just send me your W-9. And I'm like, I have like 30 of those because I'm or more. Cause just like,
I think they just had to look at our taxes for the last 3 years of like, oh, do you have money? Do you have consistent money that's gone in the last couple of years? Okay.
I literally just sent them like all of our tax returns. How much do you have in the bank?
And they like literally had to ask us all
I was like, here, look at this. Have I saved enough? And they're like, oh yeah, you can buy a house. I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, good.
It was scary.
I don't know what I'm doing. And so if you're like that and you're just sort of, you feel like a lot of financial stuff does not apply as well, because so much of it is geared at, here's your 9 to 5, and like, okay, here you have
20%
your W-2
of your paycheck
and like
goes here, and
automate your paycheck, which he talks about a lot. I was like, automate your paycheck, so it'll automatically get charged.
But that doesn't really work for us.
Which, hey, if you are employed like that, read this book. It'll be super helpful to you in automating everything, so you don't stress or worry about it. But for us, that didn't really work.
We had to augment it and be like,
every quarter, we know we're going to be paying taxes. Okay, so then let's look at our finances every quarter, and then we'll say, okay, here's how much we have. Here's what we should.
Here's what we go for taxes, sales tax, federal tax. This is how much it requires us to live on. And then what we kind of do is we kind of look at our excess. Like, what's our base live on cost? What's our mortgage, groceries, all that, plus our taxes that we have to save for that quarter, plus taxes that we're going to save at the end of the year. So like things that we need to save for, because we know running business is hard. Like, what's our excess? What are we doing with, like, if we made more money than we actually need that year? Then we look at that amount using his guidelines and then augmented them some. And then how much of that is going towards retirement? How much of this extra is going towards the stuff that we don't like need to live on and stay legal? Like what's just going towards retirement? What's going towards savings? What's going towards like a fund? What's going towards travel fund? What's, like we have, then we segment it that way. And so.
And one big thing he talks about in the book is having guilt-free spending. And I think it's 10% or 20%
I don't remember
of your take-home pay basically should be guilt-free spending. Where basically you've automated your finances and set them up in a way where you're saving for retirement, you are paying all of your bills, you're paying all of your fixed costs, paying your mortgage, paying your rent.
You shouldn't feel bad about this money.
There should be like a percentage, and I think it's 10 or 20%, where literally you can just spend this on whatever the heck you want.
Something ridiculous. And you should feel no guilt towards it because all the other areas... hitting things. I'm so passionate. All the other areas are covered. And if you're covered in retirement and you've paid all this off and you don't have credit card debt, you should never feel bad about spending something that creates happiness and like funds your rich life, basically.
So he gives examples in there of like people that buy sneakers and they have a sneaker collection, or people that go out to eat every single night, or they go out dancing like 4 nights a week or something like that.
And if all these areas are filled, then they shouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah. And so for us, like, okay, now that we've sort of adopted this philosophy, we're saying, okay, like, I think for us, we do want to travel more, so let's spend some more money on that. We like to go out to eat, so let's try to go out. We go out like a few times a week, I would say. And let's do that in a way where we don't feel guilty about it. And so that's been really nice, just to be able to say, oh, well, here's what we're spending, here's what we're doing, and we don't have to stress.
And I know where my money is, and I know where it's going, I know what it's doing. I'm not like hiding from it. I feel like a lot of people are me, like I had a lot of fear, and so I just didn't know how my money was working for me, and so that avoidance was causing anxiety. Yeah. And so if we're sitting down quarterly, at least we have a conversation about it quarterly of like, okay, this is how much money we made, this is how much we need to save for taxes this quarter, this is how much we paid in taxes this quarter, this is how much excess we had. This is like, if we go over the numbers, it's not a fast, it doesn't take too long. It's a pretty fast conversation. Then we can be like, oh, like we did really well, or like, oh, we can like put a little bit more towards travel. Or sometimes the conversation is like, oh, that was a little expensive. Like we need to dial this back. And maybe we don't go out, like we don't save as much to travel, and maybe we won't have as much. So maybe we're like, are we putting more into retirement? Like, cause that's our priority. And maybe we'll dial back something else if that's really I think for right now, our number one priority with that excess is retirement.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to fully fund that and like do as much as we can funneling to that as we legally can.
Because I feel like we saved some for retirement in our 20s, but not nearly
enough.
As aggressively as I would have liked to have.
Yeah.
Now that I understand it more.
Yeah.
And I'm in my mid-30s. I'm like, crap, I probably should save more.
So
okay,
that's our number one priority with our excess money or our flexible money. And we're doing actually more than what he recommends towards retirement, because I feel like we lost a lot of years in our 20s that we're trying to make up for. And we have the ability to. And so that's like our number one priority. And then we kind of fluctuate everything else. Like, we do have a little bit excess. Like, do we want to take another trip, or do we want to put it in the house fund, or like, we can have those conversations, and that's a fun conversation to have. It's like, oh, yeah. I know these other areas are taken care of. Our base costs are taken care of. Like our education, education for our kids are taken care of. Our savings is taken care of. Like, what do we like? What that's fun. It turns like the money into a fun conversation. Like, yeah. Oh, we have a little excess. Like here, like I know what the money is. So like, I know we have a couple $1,000s more. Like, what do we want to do with it? Like, that's a fun conversation, because it could do anything. Like it could, oh, we want to go like on another trip, or we want to fund and like put it into working on the kitchen, like renovating our kitchen, like put it towards that. Like, it becomes more of a joyous conversation about money instead of oh, this is really depressing because I don't know what my money is doing. And that's scary.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I have a good understanding of what my money is doing right now.
And that's one of the nicest things about it, is that it doesn't feel like we've felt in the past where it's like, okay, where's the money going? Okay, we have enough saved. What are we doing with it? Where's it going?
There's a lot of mystery there, and it was scary.
This really sort of solidifies everything. Here's where your money needs to be. Here's what you need to be doing. And that's really, really nice.
So if you like our money talk and he wants to talk about it more, we
Yes.
definitely can, because there's more specifics that we can talk to. Like, this is how much, and I don't feel bad if you want to talk. I don't know, like how much do you want us to get into it? I don't know.
I don't
in
know.
the
It
future,
depends on how much people want to get
yeah,
into
yeah.
it.
So if
they
you
want
like
us to get
this, let
into
us
it at
know,
all.
because
Yeah.
just tell us what you want us to talk about, because we like talking about random stuff. So we want to know. We want to talk about what you guys want to hear.
I'll talk more about what Rachel's
Book
fantasy book
preferences,
preferences are. That's
or
quality
TV.
quality content right
I have
there.
lots of recommendations. So if you want me to talk about my trash, like, because I watch a lot of TV, and I've been getting into reading.
A
So
lot
I
of
used
trash
to.
TV.
I'm a TV equal opportunist. I like
Yes.
it all. There's only a couple genres of TV that I dislike. I would
She's
say
very
I
broad.
dislike Judge Judy, Gordon Ramsay, the show Cops,
Yeah.
and The Simpsons. That's probably the only things I dislike.
Doesn't
Everything
even-
else is good.
Doesn't even really. Okay, Judge Judy would be like, I guess you
Courtroom,
could say
fake,
courtroom and
like,
law enforcement dramas and reality TV. She does not like that.
like, I don't like things that are like real fake, where it just like harps on the depravity of like the human existence, like the news.
Harps on
Or-
the depravity of the human existence. Look at that. There it
gonna be
is
the
right
sub-
there.
Like, I just like, it's just depressing. Like,
There's
why
my
would
title,
I watch?
Harping on the depravity of human existence in this podcast.
Why would
And
I
people are
watch
gonna be like,
that?
why are they talking about finances for like 20 minutes? I'm like, yeah, you'll get to it at the end. Hilarious.
See, I need to read more books. My vocabulary.
So broad. So great. Cool. Well, let us know.
What do you want me to talk about? What do you want us to talk about?
What do you want Rachel to talk about?
Who
I'm
do
just
you
here.
want us to talk to?
Yeah. Let me know
Who
all
do you
that
want
stuff.
to
Okay.
be a guest?
Cool. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.